Those hotlines, you know what I'm talking about. And the reason they get the recording of you is that they will actually edit an audio clip of them saying something like, do you agree to this charge or whatever, and then tack on your yes response that they had. So now they have a supposed proof recording of you agreeing to charges that you never agreed to, such as if the phone company asks for proof that you actually did agree to this charge, or you go to challenge it later. It's very tricky stuff. So here's the best thing to do to avoid this type of scam. If you get a call that asks, can you hear me? Then obviously just hang up immediately, that's the scam. But if you aren't sure, like if they say, is this whoever, maybe respond by saying, may I ask who's calling and why? Don't say yes or anything like that. Then you can probably judge the response yourself if they're legitimate. Of course, most of the time, you can just tell if it's a telemarketer or something. So I'd say just hang up either way. No need to even waste your time. You don't have to be nice to the telemarketers. And I'm sure you know, if you tell telemarketers in general that you're not interested, they won't leave it at that. They're going to try to keep bugging you to keep you talking, even though you're not interested at all. So better to just not take the risk. Okay, so that might be the newest scam, but what are some other ones to watch out for? The next one is the so-called star 72 scam, or call forwarding scam. And this one is another tricky one that might not seem obvious if you don't know what's going on. For those not aware, star 72 is one of the many star codes that you can type into your phone, either it's a cell phone or a landline, that will perform different functions. Star 72 in particular activates call forwarding. So when you type in star 72, then any phone number, it will then forward all calls to your number to the other phone number that you just typed in. So in this scam, the scammer will try to get you to type in a phone number beginning with star 72. For example, they may say, we were in an accident and we need you to call an ambulance or hospital, and then give you the code and then the phone number, and they might say, oh, well, this star code allows you to get directly to the doctor or something like that. Meanwhile, now all your calls are going to get forwarded to that number. There's also another one where they say, oh, they're calling from jail and they called the wrong number and they only get one phone call. Can you please call my wife or something like that? And then they get you to type it in that way. But either way, if someone asks you to type in a star code, it's a scam. And then after you do that, the scammer will give your phone number to someone who wants to call them from like long distance collect. So you have to pay for all those collect calls. And the two scammers can talk as much as they want while you foot the bill, because the collect call is technically being forwarded through you. So they just use your phone number to steal calls, and they don't have to pay for it no matter how long distance it is. So just be aware of what star codes are, and don't type any of them in if someone tells you to. The next scam is one that is definitely not new, but people somehow still fall for it sometimes. It's the notorious Windows support scam. This is where you'll get a random phone call from someone who claims to be from Microsoft or sometimes from Windows. Yeah, it doesn't even make sense. But they'll say something along the lines of, your computer has been sending us error messages. Let me help you fix it. And then they guide you through some ridiculous process on your computer that will show supposed errors as proof that your computer clearly is broken. But here's the scam part. Then they tell you that to fix it, you need to download a certain program from whatever website they give, and of course, it's a virus. And then after that, they have full control of your computer. They're going to log everything you type into it, and of course, use it to steal your money. So yeah, Microsoft is not going to call you about your computer. Next up is a more general type of scam, which are fake bank security calls. And I thought I'd talk about this because they are kind of tricky, because sometimes the bank or credit card company will call you if they suspect fraud is occurring. So I thought I'd go over how to be sure that you're not going to fall for this. So for example, a scammer may call you and claim to be the bank and say that your card has a suspicious charge or something like that. They may also leave a message saying, call back this number for the fraud department. And then before they can tell you about it, they need to verify the credit card number, which of course involves you giving them their credit card number. So what should you do about this? What if the credit card company is actually calling you about fraud? Well, what I say is anytime you get a call or message claiming to be from the bank, always make sure you call them. So go to your bank's website and call the official number there, or the one on the back of the card, and have them just transfer you to the correct department. You can't be sure that the person who calls you is who they say they are, or, for example, if they're fake and they say, oh, call our fraud department, and of course it's not really that. So you want to make sure that you're calling something that you know is legitimate. Now, finally, I just have to quickly mention the notorious IRS scam calls. These are pretty easy to spot and almost always involve someone calling you from the IRS or some other tax agency saying that you owe a bunch of taxes, and if you don't pay up, you're going to go to jail. Now, the important thing to know here, and the main point, is that with this, the IRS does not call people without sending a letter first. So if out of the blue, you just get a message saying, oh, you're going to go to jail if you don't pay us, yeah, that's obviously a scam. For something that serious, the IRS would definitely send you a notice via certified mail so you wouldn't just get it lost in the mail. So there's not much more to say about that one. They're pretty obvious, but just know that the IRS in general doesn't call you without letting you know by mail first. So now that you know some of these scams, what can you do going forward? Well, first of all, if you do get a spam or a scam call, don't respond in any way, even by pressing a number on the keypad. I remember one time I had just booked a hotel, for example, and just by chance, I got a spam call that very night claiming to be from that company that I just booked the hotel room with, so I was kind of thrown off guard. It said something like, oh, here's a free gift, just press 1 to learn more. Now, normally this would be a huge red flag, but the timing of it threw me off, so just out of curiosity, I pressed 1, and of course it transferred me to someone with a thick accent saying I won a free cruise, and it was obviously a scam, so I hung up. But the problem was, and here's my point, is because I pressed 1 initially, they now knew that my number worked. So they put it on a list of working numbers, or probably sold it on a list. So for literally months afterwards, I kept getting more of the same spam calls every week. It took forever for me to stop getting them. So don't even interact with these spammers or scammers at all, and at best, don't even answer it in the first place. Another thing you can do is there are actually apps out there that will block suspected spam calls. The one I've been using is called Mr. Number. I think it's the most popular one, and it also is on Android and iPhone. Anyway, something like that will use caller ID and community reports to automatically flag phone numbers that are known to be scams or heavily suspected and just block them, or at least warn you. With the Mr. Number app I just mentioned, you can also look at your recent call history through it, and it will show you reports other people left about that number. So it's pretty nifty. You can kind of see people say, oh, this is a spam call, they wanted to offer me credit card reports, or, oh, it's this person calling. It's just good to know. So I guess that's it. Those are some common phone scams to watch out for and some things you can do to avoid them also. Hopefully you guys found this video helpful, and if you liked it, be sure to give it a thumbs up. I'd really appreciate it. And let me know, maybe if you want me to make more videos like this in the future, I'll try to keep an eye out on new scams that come out and let you guys know about them. Also,
I'm going to readjust the screen, the thing again, and then I'll be right back. Did any of those phone scams seem familiar to you or sound familiar? Has anybody succumbed to any of those? No? That's good. One of the points he made towards the very end is one of the best points, is just hang up. He made the remark that I thought was funny. It's not a problem to be rude to a telemarketer. If you hear, I'm here to talk to you about your windows, just hang up. That's all, don't even engage them in conversation that way. That brings us to the next page then on your handout of protecting yourself. When it comes to phone scams, I thought of this while we were watching the video. How many of you have a form of caller ID, either on the phone in your apartment or on your cell phone? Does most everybody have that? If it comes up as an unknown call, just leave it go. Let it ring itself out. And the old expression is not an old expression, but it's a true expression. If it's somebody who knows you, or if it's important, what will they do? They'll leave a message, and you could call. Yeah, you could call them back. That's like I said. If they leave a message, then you know that it's legitimate, and it's that way. Those are some ways that you can protect yourself. Let's just look at those real quickly. If you're worried that you might be a good fraud target, the little message that I sent around, the little note that I sent around to everybody with the guy with the target on his back, just by virtue of being a retiree, you have a target on your back. Unfortunately, we live in an era that's different than maybe it was 50 years ago, and a lot of people see older adults as naive. They see older adults as being trusting because, and I'm not so much of this kind. I grew up in a small town, so there is that trust element, but we would never think of doing that to somebody else. So why would somebody do that to us? And again, that's a very prevalent thing. There are some things that are listed on here that are good for you to take a look at. The way to check your finances with your stockbroker or with your account managers. You know who that person is, or you should at least know who that person is, or what agency it's with. And you can tell by the conversation you have if that person is validly from the place you're talking about. Protect yourself in the mail. I touched on that with Melissa. If the thoughts of the next thing down there, if thoughts of criminals having your private information scares you, a number of companies promise to keep your identity safe for a fee. My experience is that unless you are managing lots and lots of money or lots of businesses, a paid service isn't really necessary if you're just taking care of your own personal finances at this point. However, there are people here at Timbercrest, and you may be one of them, who still manages a farm or manages a family business or has your hand in something like that. Having a paid service, this one mentions Norton LifeLock. That's a company that will be very secure for you to do that. Again, my experience is that for just managing personal money, the LifeLock and those kinds of companies aren't so necessary. But if, like I said, if you're involved with something like that involves any kind of business operation, it's worth at least looking at. To block unsolicited calls, that's the do not call registry, and I gave you that website here on the front page, so it's handy for you. The last thing there, to check out a caregiver. This is another thing that a lot of older adults are very susceptible to. At Timbercrest, it's not so much of an issue, but you may be tempted to say, you know what, I'd like to have a home care person come in once a week on their own to come to my apartment and help take care of things, clean up, do some things that I need to have done. There are all kinds of people out there selling themselves for that service. And unfortunately, a lot of them are not scrupulous. And you might say, a little bit at a time. Well, I didn't realize that I misplaced those earrings. Well, guess where they are? I didn't know that my phone or my computer was being used for this or for that, because again, these people are unscrupulous. So there's a couple of websites there. Check out a caregiver, somebody that could come in. And even if maybe you're not the one that wants to do that, if you want somebody to supplement what Timbercrest does, because we really scrutinize the people who work here. They go through all kinds of checks and stuff before we hire them. And if they do something wrong, they're gone. We don't keep anybody around that's that way. So if you have a service that comes in or a caregiver that comes in that's not part of the Timbercrest staff, either you or maybe somebody in your family can look this Good Hire or checker.com. They'll be able to help you verify those people. Then the last page is something that, just so you're aware of it, you don't really need to know. Most of us, I wrote a check the other day, and the store that I was in still takes checks, but the clerk said, I haven't seen anybody write a check for ages. And so checks aren't so much a factor anymore as credit cards and that sort of thing. But your money in the fraud world is very negotiable. Credit cards and debit cards are something that can be used fast. I mentioned that when they got my credit card information, as soon as I hung up, I thought, I've just been swindled, and I called the bank right away. But they can make all kinds of charges very rapidly. It used to be, it's not so much anymore, but it used to be a lot of restaurants. You remember when you used to give your credit card to the waiter or the waitress, and they would take your card and you'd fill out a carbon. Well, a lot of times those folks would take, unscrupulous folks would take a piece of paper, and as you wrote the credit card account number, they were getting a copy, and then they'd go ahead and use that. That's not so prevalent anymore since everything's gone electronic, but it's worth keeping track of what your expenditures. So if you go out, you spend the day maybe in Warsaw, you go to the doctor's office, you go out for lunch at Matt Anthony's, and you go do a little bit of shopping, it's worth your while to either check online or have your family check online your expenditures for the day to make sure that nobody's done that. That's just a really good habit to get into. Another thing that is very common when it comes to credit and debit cards is someone will call and say, we want you to go down to CVS or to Dollar General and pick up a cash card worth $150, and for that cash card, we will deliver to you X, Y, or Z, whatever it might be. Those people become very aggressive. I mentioned earlier the person who lived out in the neighborhood homes that lived at Timbercrest and was scammed that way. I went over to their apartment. He said, I don't know what to do. They're going to call me, and they told me they're going to be at my house in 15 minutes. So I went right over there, and of course I knew they weren't going to be there, and they weren't there, but they did telephone, they did call, and I said, look, I'm this guy's friend. I said, I work here at the place where he lives, and I said, if you're coming here in 15 minutes, we're going to have the police here in 15 minutes. And of course it never transpired, but that, just the threat of the police getting involved, but that was a situation where the guy did not hang up the phone as soon as he had the opportunity, and so he could have been swindled for a lot of money, and they were very aggressive with him. It's a very pertinent topic. It's something that's really important, I think, for us to stay on top of. Before we close, do you have any comments or questions or anything like that? Joanne, and then Alma?
Yeah, my son is a computer kind of expert in Texas, so he warns me a lot of things, but he says now he's retired, he gets 20 phone calls a day from scammers. He doesn't answer the phone until he hears my voice telling him what I'm calling about. because he's always running to the phone. And he said, a lot of these people are out of the country, so they don't care what the laws are.
That's right.
But one thing that I'm getting so conservative, is sometimes I get an offer for a seminar, like from Edward Jones or something, and I kind of like to hear it, but they say I have to take my cookies off. Well, I'm not too good at taking my cookies off and on, I'm afraid I'll mess it up. But I'm wondering, is that dangerous to take your cookies off? I know you get advertisers, but do you get scammers too?
You do get advertisers. Joanne asked about taking your cookies off. If you're on the internet, you shut off your cookies or turn off cookies. It does help limit advertisers, but one of the things that cookies do is that they help trace. So let's say it was a fraudulent website. The cookies help trace where that came from. So if it did involve police, they could say this is where the activity came from. Now a lot of the scammers are pretty slick, and they can get around that. But that's a way of helping. So I wouldn't do it. What I would do is what he suggested in the video. If Edward Jones calls and says, or you get an email or something that says, we want you to participate in this seminar, I would call whoever the Edward Jones person is here in town and say, I got this information about a webinar, is this legitimate? And then have them say, oh yeah, it's just fine, just go to the website and you can watch it. That's what I would do.
I still have to take the cookies off, if that's all right.
They would answer that, but I suspect not.
Okay.
I suspect not.
Then, Google, they know more about me than I do myself.
They do?
They write you try to write something and they put the words in front of you, and they're always sending you things, they figured out what you might read, and so they send you recipes or whatever because they keep a track of what you've seen.
It's scary.
They've got to have a lot of information.
They do. Excuse me, Alma?
Talking about keeping your credit card under control, used to be the waitress at big time establishments would take your card and go off
Yeah.
Right.
and put your bill on, but you don't know but what they take your number.
Right. That's right. That's why I said go check your accounts. Now, if you're on the internet, it's very easy to go to your bank, put in your secure codes and stuff, and you can see exactly what's been spent or not. Grace?
I want to inquire about police calls for helping the police. I have 3 different kinds of calls, and it sounds like the same person is making the call.
Mm-hmm.
I've got the place where I hang up on it. It doesn't sound real to me anymore.
No, that's right.
They have the police usually have wonderful retirement.
They have what?
They don't need that extra boost.
That's, I wondered about that.
Sure. Again, that's a situation, especially in a lot of towns bigger than Manchester, have athletic programs and stuff that are sponsored by the Police Athletic League. So they represent that they're raising money for this or that. So you think I'm helping out the baseball team or something like that or whatever it might be. It's always better just to say, okay, thanks, hang up on them, and call the police department and say, not 911, but the regular police department phone number, and say, I got a call about helping to support the Police Athletic League. Are you guys raising money? And they'll tell you yes or no. And if they're not, then you haven't lost anything. But that's the best way to do it. Other thoughts or questions before we go?
What are cookies?
Oh, what are cookies? Besides something delicious, cookies are a thing that's on every computer. That the reason they're called a cookie is because digitally within the computer they look like a little, if you use your imagination, a little chocolate chip cookie. It's a circle with some dots in it. The cookies themselves, though, are things that help track. So if Joanne went to a recipe website that she's looking up a recipe for baked beans, then the next day you get on Google and you might see an advertisement for Bush's baked beans. And the cookies help the computer to identify that. There's good things about that, but there's also downsides about that. The good things are that if you do a lot of regular study or cooking or whatever it might be, you might appreciate those suggestions and you might appreciate some of that. But the downside is, of course, it leaves you vulnerable to say, okay, all kinds of advertisers are going to show up and they're going to try to, so it's just, but cookies, every computer has them, and you can set your computer at the end of the day to erase cookies so that the next time you use it, then you're just adding more cookies, and then the next day it gets erased again. So.
Why do you do that?
Alma's question was, how do you do that? It's pretty involved to discuss here, but you just go into your computer settings, look up cookies under settings, and then you'll have some options there to accept cookies or only take cookies from websites that you visit or some things like that. That's the short answer. Anything else? This isn't really a 90s Club thing, but I want to remind you or mention to you that on June the 6th, I think it's June 6th, it's a Wednesday. June 9th. It's June 9th. I'm glad I looked. June 9th, we're having a party or an open house for centenarians, everybody at Timbercrest over 100 years old. And so we want you to feel free to come and greet everybody here who's over 100 years old. And hopefully, as members of the 90s Club, that's the next step, is to join the 100-year-olds Club. But we will have our meeting on the third Friday of June. We have to, because of the Timbercrest chat now, we're having to meet on Fridays. And when we met last month, there was kind of a consensus that we'd rather meet at 3 rather than at 2 for those of you who enjoy your after-dinner nap. But would you rather meet at 2, or is 3 okay? If 3 is okay, then we'll keep it at 3 o'clock the third Friday in June, and we'll see you then. Thanks for coming, everybody. Oh, okay. This isn't a 90s Club related question, but it is a good curiosity. Grace Voorhees just asked, what's the big tent for out in the courtyard? The main or the primary reason we got that was because if, heaven forbid, but if it comes that we need to shut down again, and nobody wants that, but just in case it does come around, we wanted to have another option, an additional option for outside visiting. The gazebo that's out there is okay for outside visits, but now we have 2 locations, and then in the colder weather, the tent will stay warmer than the gazebo ever will. But now that the tent is up, we're also planning to do some activities out in the courtyard as well, some things outdoors, maybe coffee and cookies outside, maybe an art class outdoors, some things like that. But we just got it up this week, and so that's it. But that's what it's for.
Okay, I'm going to ask another. I think they made a big mistake when they finished off this snack shop and didn't put an electric door. Anyone who has a cart has to work to get out, whether it's electric cart or whether it's just a
Walker or pushing a wheelchair.
I think that was a big mistake.
Actually, that's really there is in the works a redesign of the snack shop, a major redesign of the snack shop. That's a good thing to bring up. I will bring that up and talk to them about adding that to it, because what a great idea. to be able to do that.
Yeah, there really is only two that I know of to get out in there, I and M are the only places to get out in the.
Yes, I think that's right, without the automatic door. So that's a great suggestion, Grace. Thank you. That's really excellent. Other questions or concerns or thoughts? All righty. Thanks for coming, everybody.
Thank you.
Yeah, there was a video about 10-minute video about phone scams. I have your email, I think, right? I can do like send you a link to that video you can watch it. This guy does, he's mostly technology, internet and computer technology, but he also does yearly updates on scams and scammers. And this was the video was the top 5 phone scams. So I'll send you the link to that by email. Alrighty? Are you all right?
Yeah, I got a bleeding foot.
Oh, no. Well, I hope so.
Incidentally, when you're up with that far away from people, why do you wear a mask?
We're supposed to.
That's why I think this you're all right.
Well, trust me, this has been argued in the management team for weeks. Why did the motion leader down there lose money?
Unless I know who they are. If they don't say who they are, and their name, and no one is number, we don't know. We don't care about the target. I don't say we have to anything at all. Because it might be something that they were trying to do.